Welcome to the 28-day photo challenge. Today is day one, portrait. So we're going to go over some of the elements, just kind of the key points that you want to look for when taking a portrait. So you can use these base factors into photography, so that way you know just kind of like the quick list of things to actually look for, which will make setting up and shooting faster. Now I'm going to explain things to look for on the way, so let's get right into it. Now there's going to be three things that you want to look into when taking portraits. The first is going to be the composition of the photo. Right now, I'm centered in the frame, and my face is within the upper 2/3 of the frame. So the upper half of my torso taking up the lower section of the frame, while having negative space over to the side and then accents on one side. Now those elements are going to be adding, well, elements, but by making me the focal point in the photo, that's going to be accenting me more than anything. So now if we were to take a picture and assess that for how it is, there are some things that we could change. And one of which is going to be accenting me further than the side element by moving me forward. So that way we have depth of field to isolate me from everything else, while still keeping the photo somewhat interesting by having other elements in it. Now by zooming in slightly, that's isolating me more in the photo because the background now has bokeh. So even though it's adding more elements to the photo itself, it's still isolating me from it. So now, if we're to take a portrait, you would see that I'm isolated in the photo significantly more than the rest of the photo, but it's not just a boring picture of just me, because there's negative space to one side, elements to the other side, while isolating me in the photo. So that's the second thing that you want to take into account, is your background surroundings and how they'll affect capturing the subject. Now the third thing that you want to take into account is zoom and angle. So now we have the element on our side, but also we have other elements on the back that are now in the bokeh. So we have two accent points, and because this is a lamp, we have a soft light on me without accenting the background. Now if we add a secondary light to the background, that's going to be adding more depth to the background, but without taking tons away from me, which kind of relieves the negative space, which is counterproductive to what I just talked about. But this is going to add a full range of balance to the photo, which then brings into the situation of candid photography, of catching people when they're in a completely different direction. Then you're both capturing life in the presence as well as a portrait of someone else. So those are essentially the three main elements that you actually want to look into when you're taking portraits, just to keep the workflow happening quicker, easier, without impacting all of the surroundings. So you can look for elements or accent lighting, any kind of lighting like a phone flashlight for instance, just as your backdrop lighting to highlight rear elements in the photo, all without actually taking away from the subject itself, as well as utilizing foreground and background objects. So if you get out there and practice those three things of having in-shot elements, negative space or backdrop elements, and then knowing the composition of the subject for the photo itself, then over time it just becomes a natural reflex to look for those things before taking portraits. So hopefully you got something out of this. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, that's awesome, or don't do any of it. I'm not telling you what to do.